What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I am back with the betting show for this week. No big UFC, Bellator, PFL, or One Championship this week, but we still have 5 bets for you this week. We have Cage Warriors, which I did a preview of. I have a few bets from that. I have a couple of bets from Invicta, which goes down this weekend. If you haven't seen my interview with the champ, Danni McCormack, who's in the main event, please check that out. Actually a really good interview. Danny's a great character and everything. Please check that out. And I have one sneaky bet from, arguably the biggest combat sports event of the weekend, the main event, Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou. So there's MMA there. It's MMA adjacent. I will not make a habit of this, do not worry. But it's a very quiet weekend in terms of, I suppose, worldwide mixed martial arts. So I threw an extra one in, and why not? Especially after a pretty good week we had last week. Now, good and bad, I suppose. I gave 5 bets, as I always did. And as I told you last week, I gave 2 bets from one fight, which is always a dangerous play. Now, that fight happened to be a no contest. Obviously, Johnny Walker versus Ankalaev. I had Walker by decision at plus 800, and I had to fight the over 1.5 rounds. And I thought the over 1.5 rounds was a loss, to be honest, but I put it out on Twitter, and everyone said, oh no, I had it backed, and you got your money back. So that's 2 void bets there. Basically, pretty much all bets were voided when it's no contest. So if you leave those 2 bets aside, went 3 from 3 last week with bets, so pretty happy with that. We had Aliskerov to win in round 1 or 2 at minus 180. I'm pretty sure I said that was a steal last week, but looking back at it now, it's a steal among steals. Like, it was a very favourable matchup in terms of the way his opponent has been fighting recently, especially obviously Warley Alberth, especially his last fight against Nicholas Dalby, where he's just massively open for the whole fight. Going in there fighting Aliskerov like that is not a wise decision. And this guy is, I'll say it again, you won't get minus 180 in him to win in round 1 or 2 from now on. So I think that was a very good price for a pretty sure thing. Again, Makhachev minus 250, not the biggest price in the world, and I don't like giving those, but I had a very strong feeling for him, and he won even stronger than my feeling was. So look, throw that in there as well. And then we had a pretty good bet at plus 250. We had Chimaev to win by decision, which he did, although it was very close. I actually had it for Usman myself. Watching back the fight, I do think it probably should have been a draw, just to maybe touch quickly on the 10-8 thing. I didn't score the 10-8 because that's kind of the way, in my opinion, that fights have been scored over the last while, and that's kind of the memo that judges and everything got about the 10-8s recently. But it seems like it has been kind of rolled back a little bit. Also, the fight wasn't in America, it wasn't in Nevada, and that helps, although there was one American judge, and he still scored it a 10-8, so that's no excuse. But yeah, we need to know about judging for betting as well, so that's not a bad thing at all. But the recap of last week, 3 from 3, pretty good. The Flier void, the other bet void, so we're not too bad. Overall record now, looking a little bit better, 71 from 147 bets. 13 of 37 overall in the Flyer, which I'm delighted with, to be honest. If you told me at the start of the year I would have hit 13 Flyers, I would have snapped your hand off for that. So we go again. This week's Flyer isn't really a Flyer, if we're being honest, but I'll call it a Flyer anyway, and we'll go from there. Just because, like, when, and I know this is actually interesting. Maybe we could talk about this for a minute, but when there's like Invicta cards, Cage Warriors cards, there's very little prop bets on them until very late in the week sometimes. Like the last Cage Warriors card, which was obviously in Dublin, I was looking at the betting odds up until very late, because it was an Irish card and a little bit, obviously a lot of interest in all of them, more interest in that one. And I was searching for props, and there was almost nowhere where you could get any props, let alone like to win by knockout or to win by submission or to win in round 1, like just normal small props. Forget about he wins by a go-go plata in round 4 type of thing, and that's very annoying. And I don't know, like, I suppose it's hard for the betting companies to have the knowledge of all those fighters and have people who can, I suppose, put those lines out there. Because you look at the Rome card this weekend, And I painstakingly went through a lot of those fighters for the preview, and you know, you never know what fighter is going to show up. You never know who knows what about the fighter. You never know who's done the study. It must take a lot to actually get those odds as a thing that won't bankrupt you if you're them. Although we'll never worry about a bankrupt bookie. But at the same time, it would be nice to have a few more prop bets and everything like that. Especially now when I record this show midweek, it's tough to get them. But I do like to hold out as long as I can, get a few prop bets in and then do it. But this week we are all, apart from one, we've one prop bet. We're all straight money line bets. So let's get into them. And let's start with the biggest MMA fight of the weekend. And it is the main event of Invicta FC 54, which goes down over in Boston. Boston. I gotta sound like John Anik. Boston. In Massachusetts in the US. And it is Danni McCormack against Karolina Wojcik. And my bet for that is straight up money line bet of Danni McCormack at -165. When this betting opened, and it opened maybe 24 hours, 36 hours ago, a little bit less. It actually, the Invicta betting opened before the Cage Warriors betting. The Cage Warriors betting was kind of what I was waiting on this week. Danni was around -225. And at that price, I was like, well, maybe, you know, it is the biggest fight of the week. I kind of want to have a bet from the biggest fight of the week, and maybe we'll throw it in. But when it's down to -165, I think that's very, very good, and I'm definitely having that as one of my plays of the week. Obviously, spoke to Danni last week and spoke about this fight a lot, and you know what it means to her, and the actual fight itself. And I got a good feeling that she kind of has the right idea going into it, if that makes sense. Like, they fought once before as amateurs, and I feel like they were both very different sorts of fighters. Like, Danni fought a Danni McCormack fight, but not as good as she normally fights. Like, she is a go forward, put pressure on you, put you against the cage. As she says herself, like, she's not the most athletically or physically gifted or anything like that, but she will wear you out. You know, like, and we've seen fighters like that have massive success down through the years. The likes of, see, even Michael Bisping is the first one who comes to mind, or, you know, someone like even a Kenny Florian, or, you know, there's lots of fighters down through the years have had, you know, the mental willingness to do it brings them a very, very far way. And it feels like the additions she's put to her game with that has just made her such a good fighter and got her to this place in her career. And, like, you know, she has won the Invicta Championship. Now the next part is the UFC. She's 33 years of age. You know, she was kind of saying, I don't think it was in this interview I did, but in a previous one where she was basically saying, like, you know, this is the last shot in my career. I'm going to go. If I get to the UFC, okay, I'll give it a few more years. If not, we'll see how it goes. But it's, you know, and it's all on the line for Danni. So it's massive in this fight. The fight against Karolina Wojcik, as I said, is an interesting one, a rematch of an amateur fight they had before. And in that amateur fight, Wojcik was kind of picking Danni off as she pressured, and Danni's pressure game was a lot less advanced maybe than it is today. And Karolina fights a little bit differently. So the difference between that fight and this fight is this. We'll go from Karolina's point of view first. She was in that fight, but you hear the commentary in that fight if you go back and watch it, talking about her being an attacking fighter and someone who hits very hard. In that fighter, she was kind of and I wouldn't say a defensive fighter, she was a counter fighter in that fight, and still hit very hard and kind of was attempting to pick Danni up. And it was a relatively close fight, actually a very fun, exciting fight. And she did a good job of winning it like that. Her recent fights, a lot less, you know, abrasive, a lot less power, a lot less attacking, you know, a lot of pushing you against the cage, you know, catching your front leg, holding you in the clinch type of stuff. And it's, you know, it's been relatively successful, I suppose, for her, coming in with an 11-3 record. She obviously lost to Valesca Machado a couple of fights ago, the person who Danni beat for the title. But other than that, she's won 6 of her last 7 fights, and she's on an absolutely fantastic run. But a lot of that, you know, all of those wins, in fact, have been decisions. And I think a couple of them split decisions as well. So I suppose that tells you the type of fighter she has become. Like, early days, her first 2 wins were knockouts. And all the rest of her wins have been by decision. So 9 decision wins in a row, and all her losses have been by decision as well. So, as I said, of her 11 fights, 9 fights have gone to a decision. And that tells you a lot about, I suppose, what type of fighter he is. Now, a lot of Danny's, it tells you about what type of fighter she is and what type of fighter I suppose she has become. It's not massively different for Danni. I suppose she's of her 9 fights, 6 have gone to a decision and 3 have finished inside the distance. But she's fighting over 5 rounds. Okay, she fought over 5 rounds last time out, but it was a different type of fight. She knows she needs to finish here to get to the UFC. She knows she needs something big. She knows she needs to go for it. And normally that would actually put me off betting on someone. But I think that's a good thing for Danni McCormack. Because if she can go across the cage and land her shots, put on the pressure, and take her down. And she told me in that interview, like, I want to take her down, I want to take her down, I want to take her down. That's exactly, I think, what she needs to do. So, and then he's not the sort of one to lie to you. She told me the exact same thing going into the Valesca Machado fight, exactly what she was going to do. She went out and she did that exact thing. So she's not hiding her game plan at all. And I think that's the right game plan and will get her to win. I think Wojcik, the biggest issue with her is allowing her to get that control. I don't think Danni will. And I think it will get her to win. I think she'll push forward, pressure, takedown. And I think if she can get a couple of takedowns in the first 2 rounds, maybe let's say 2 to 3 takedowns in the first 2 rounds, that pressure, the wear that she will put on Karolina Wojcik, I don't think many people can actually hold up to that. We saw it with Valesca Machado. Like, Valesca nearly knocked her out a couple of times. Almost had Danni finish, her face was in absolute bits, and yet she stayed the pace better than Valesca. She's an absolute beast for cardio and everything like that. And I that's what I think will win her this fight. I think that ability to push the pace, the ability to have a good game plan, the ability to get takedowns, and Karolina can't look. If she can't get the takedowns, if she can't get the forward pressure and Karolina gets it, absolutely she can win the fight. But my call is that Danni can do it, and I'm going for her at that price of -165. Look, maybe a bit of Irish bias, but I have studied this fight, I've looked at it, and I do like Danni to win, and I like her at that price as well. Honestly, when I saw it at, what did I say it was earlier, -225 or something like that, I was like, yeah, it's a tougher one to bet at, but I think it's probably a more accurate price. Now, it's MMA, anyone can win, anything can happen, but at -165, I do think that is a more encouraging price to bet on Danni McCormack, and that is my bet 1 of the week. Bet 2 of the week is it's a women's fight, but it's actually from Cage Warriors, and it is Samantha Jean-Francois to win her fight over in Cage Warriors against former Dana White Contender Series alum Micol Disegni. I watched some of Samantha, and for the first time ever, I think, and I was very, very, very impressed. She's been around for a good long time, but it feels like she's still a prospect. Doesn't have the best record in the world, I suppose, at 8-6. But you just have to look at her and see what type of fighter she is. She's a vicious striker. I was talking to, if you haven't seen my preview with Brad Wharton, please watch that. But I was talking to him about it, and kind of we both agreed, I think, that she's had to become very good on the ground because everyone is basically taking her down because she's so good on the feet. And I think, 7 of her 8 finishes have been by submission. But I think this is going to be a standing fight. I think Disegni is going to keep it up. She has a takedown in her locker, and she actually can be taken down herself as well. And maybe Jean-Francois decides to do that because she has maybe a jiu-jitsu advantage, although the wrestling, I think the wrestling defense will be outweighed by the wrestling offense of both of them. So if either of them go for a takedown, I think they can probably both get it. So we'll see if that happens. But I just really like Jean-Francois. She's a real good athlete. And, you take away that record and you just look at her last couple of fights. You look how good she has been in those last couple of fights. You look how quick she is. She's won her last 4 fights in a row. So something has obviously clicked. you know, and all of them have been by submission. She beat Valentina Scatizzi, who I've talked about obviously on this channel before. She's in the finale of the PFL European Series. She beat her. She submitted her in a round. So that's, you know, very good. And she, you know, she's been in there with Zhang Weili back in 2015. She's been there with Brini Tyrell. You know, she's beaten Wendy McKenna, who's been around for a very, very long time as well. So she's been in there with some very, very good fighters. And now it feels like it's her time. At 36 years of age, again, she needs to do it now or she'll never do it. And at the other side of it then, Micol Disegni, you know, similarly 35 years of age. This is her time to do it as well after getting that chance in the Contender Series, not taking it against Mallory Martin and now turning around here. You know, she's a tough, hard-nosed fighter, but it feels like, you know, it feels like one of those fights where someone might be too tough for their own good if it stays on the feet. I think Samantha is just going to use that speed, use that power, you know, and it's funny to say, oh, that power, she's only won one fight ever by a knockout, but she has that power and she has it in her back locker. Like as I said about the props, they're not quite out for this yet. If they were out, I would love to back Jean-Francois to win by knockout. Because it'll probably be a very good price and I think it'll probably happen, to be honest. I think she will get the knockout and I think she will finish Micol Disegni in a fight that, honestly, I don't think it's going to be the highest quality fight in the world, but I do think it's going to be a fun fight and it's probably going to be a war and it's probably going to be blood and guts all over the Cage Warriors canvas, but I'm going for Disegni. Sorry, I'm going for Jean-Francois. I really like her as a fighter. I forget the record, and we go again with that one, and we'll see how it paves out as always with these bets. All right, let's move on. Bet number 3 is also from Cage Warriors, and this is a way more straightforward one, I think. And I'm going for Alberth Diaz at -225. Now, this again, you'll probably say, Shani, -225. That's not much of a price. I actually think this is massively, massively underpriced. I think he should be around -500. So if you have a prop bet for the weekend, or a parlay or an accumulator, whatever it is, this to me is one you throw into that. Now, don't blame me if you ruin your accumulators. Although, actually, do blame me if I ruin your accumulators because I deserve it because I've given you this bet. But yeah, I really like Alberth Diaz. I really like him as a fighter. The only issue with Alberth is he doesn't really fight that often. I'm recording this on Wednesday night, Thursday morning nearly. And will the fight actually happen is another thing. That's always an issue with Alberth. He's only fought twice since 2019, won both of them against Richie Smullen, you know, who's had some big wins in Bellator, who's been in, you know, he had a fight in the UFC, didn't he? He was in tough. He beat Steve Amiable as well in his last fight. 2 very, very good wins. Obviously, the one with Richie Smullen was very close. And that was in 2020. So I was in 2023 in March of this year. Obviously, he fought Steve Amiable, got another good win there. I lost the ability to speak there. But I just really like him as a fighter. Having watched him before the Smullen fight a good bit, and obviously watched him for his last couple of fights as well, covering Cage Warriors, just really, really good. He's a very flowy fighter, switches stances, constantly throwing, just... We've a phrase here in Ireland, I don't know if it's used around the world, but a tricky customer. That's what he is. He's just a tricky guy to fight, very talented. And honestly, if this guy was fighting every 5 months, I think he'd be in the UFC. I think he'd do well in the UFC. I think he'd probably have 10 fights in the UFC. That type of talent. But I don't know whether it's injury. I've never heard an interview with him or interviewed him myself or anything like that. I don't know whether he's working a job or whatever he's doing, but if this guy could get on a run, I really think he's very, very good. But also he's the type of guy that maybe that'll never happen, or maybe he's not even training. I don't know. But when I see him in the cage, I see a very talented guy. Opposite him, Simone Adana, a talented guy as well, but I don't think as talented. I think he's a good European fighter. He's been in there with some good guys. He fought Brian Moore, who's in my opinion, one of the top, 30 or 40 bantamweights in the world in mixed martial arts. Another guy who's gotten very unlucky with the matchmaking over the last while. But Adana, knees, elbows, willing to fight, old school, good leg kicks, throws it all. But I do think that'll play into the hands of Alberth Diaz. And I think he'll kind of pick him off that ability to switch stances, that ability to maybe get a takedown as well as part of it. And I just do think he's kind of going to pick him off a little bit and win that fight. So that is my third bet of the week, minus 225. Right. Do you know what? I'll finish off with the MMA first, because if you don't want to listen to the boxing stuff, I respect that. And so I'll leave that to the end. I'll go with my flyer, and it's from Invicta as well. And it's not a real flyer. It's not a mass flyer. When I looked at it yesterday, it was plus 335, and it's actually into plus 275 today. So a bit of a flyer. It's Kalindra Faria to win her fight over at Invicta against Valesca Machado, who I've mentioned a couple of times. Obviously, Valesca Machado, one of the best women in the world in that division, over in Invicta. And she's taken up Faria now, who, okay, she is 37 against a 27-year-old Valesca Machado. But watching some of her fights in the UFC, damn, she got very unlucky. Like, she nearly knocked out Jessica Eye. She did a great job taking down Joanne Wood. Ended up losing both of those fights. Like the Eye fight by split decision, could have gone either way. The Joanne Wood fight, she got triangled by Joanne Wood. Like, who does that happen to? You know, so very, very unlucky. Now, as I said, this is, I'll be honest, this is kind of a stretch and flyer. This is why I'm not telling you don't put fucking 50 quid on this or anything. Maybe put, you know, if you want a mad accumulator of all the bets or something, throw it into that. But I do like her style against Valesca Machado. I think Valesca has shown in fights recently that she has very good power, but maybe not necessarily finishing power at that level. You know, she got a lot of finishes before maybe she got to Invicta, and she was in the Dynamite Contender Series as well. Her only finish has been a submission, you know, in her last, 6 fights. So, you know, maybe overplayed a little bit, right? And I think Faria might be a better fighter on the ground. I think she might have an advantage in the takedowns, in the wrestling, in the grappling. And I think she's a very good striker. I don't, like, a lot of the women in this division, rightly so, are afraid of Valesca Machado in terms of her standing up, because she is a dangerous fighter. You know, I downplayed the power there, but if she catches you, she'll catch you. But I think Faria has power as well, arguably more and better finishing power. But in a very different way. It's hard. Do you know what? My feelings on this one are a little bit hard to explain. But I just feel like here is how I put it. I think Machado is more of like she's a 27-year-old against a 37-year-old. She's more raw. She's more like, in 4 or 5 years' time, maybe she'll be more like Faria. I feel like Faria has learned how to calm down. And when her power shots land, they land more expectedly. You know, whereas Machado, she just throws a lot of things out there and then they eventually land. Now, I still think she's a very good fighter. I will very much enjoy seeing her fight in the UFC someday, because I do think she will end up there. I think she'll probably be the Invicta champion again, maybe if Danni McCormack goes to the UFC, if she wins at the weekend. But this could hold her back a little bit from that. For real, obviously, you have seen the Danni McCormack fight as well. You know, if you can stop that early storm, you can get to her. So I'd like the cleanliness of Faria's shots. I like her technique, and I like her just to avoid Machado a little bit and end up winning that fight. Plus 275 for the flyer of the week. That's the 5th bet of the week. I'll go to the 4th bet now. From Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. And here's the bet I'm going for, right? I couldn't believe this, right? So I went to a local Irish bookmaker to get this, but I looked at another place and it's a similar bet is there at a very similar price. So an even money bet, plus 100, for a knockdown in any of the first 3 rounds. So if there's a knockdown in the first 9 minutes, plus 100, you win their bet. I think that's a fantastic bet. Like, I don't know how this is going to go. Obviously, you know, you never know if Tyson Fury is just going to kind of dance around and, you know, use this as a sparring session for his upcoming fight, not want to get hit, not going to get hurt or anything like that. Or does he want to kind of get out of there quickly so there's no chance of him taking any damage or getting an injury or, you know, pulling a hamstring or going over in an ankle or anything for his big upcoming fight for all the marbles, you know? He said he did. I saw him doing like I'll be honest, it was a terrible face-to-face. But the only thing that kind of came out of it was Tyson Fury kind of said, well, I'm actually going to attack you and I'm going to try to knock you out and I'm going to try to knock you out early. And normally I wouldn't believe that, right? But I don't think Tyson Fury kind of has it in him to lie anymore. He used to do that an awful lot, but recently I've been watching a few of his boxing matches and he just hasn't done that. So I haven't said that, right? I think Francis will come out and he will Francis will not come out like Francis comes out in MMA. I truly believe that. I think he's going to fight. He's going to fight knowingly. Francis is not an idiot. Like, he knows if he gets to a decision, it's probably him going, well, I'm sure, look, if he sees an opening, he'll throw a punch, but he's not going to come out there, overhands like he does in MMA. He's going to try to stay behind the jab and stay long and everything like that. I think that's a massive issue against Tyson Fury because his style was designed to beat styles like that. And I just think Tyson's probably going, Francis probably going to be standing straight up with his jab out, with his right hand, cocked right on his chin. And I can just see Tyson landing like a hook, a short hook inside when he gets inside, or a long hook outside across the jab and just catch him and put him down. Or I could see the first time Francis throws a punch, Tyson just going to be so fast that he knocks him down. And I'd be surprised if that didn't happen early. The power, Francis has never been near anyone as talented as Tyson Fury, obviously, in a boxing match. Or look, maybe Francis knocks him down and the bet is still won. But I think that's a smashing bet, a knockdown in rounds 1, 2, or 3 at plus 100. All right, let's look at some of the other prices from both Cage Warriors and Invicta. I pick out some of the bigger fights that I kind of like here. Alan Carlos and Leon Aliu, no betting in that one, minus 700 for Aliu. He will win. Maybe if you want to throw it into a prop. The Luke Olvin Andrei Tyshchenko fight, I was very, very close to putting Tyshchenko in as one of my bets at minus 142. I think that's a really good price. I think his wrestling will show out there. I watched him and I wasn't that impressed with his striking, but Brad tells me, and if you listen to the preview, that he has good striking, and Brad knows him better than me. So if he does against Luke Olvin, I do think he will win that fight. Luke is a good fighter, but I really like Tyshchenko as an up and comer. Matteo Martignoni, the brother of the former champion, minus 500. He looks a very good prospect as well. He's probably one to throw in there. Lupoli and LeBlanc is just going to be a really good fight. I like, do you know what? I like the underdog there, LeBlanc at minus 120, but a very even fight. I'm just going towards him there in that one. Sam Creasy against Tanio Pallariccio. This one to me is very, very, very wide. I wasn't expecting it to be this wide. Minus 275 for Sam Creasy, plus 200 for the Pagliariccio. Honestly, at that price, I'm probably going for Pagliariccio in that one. I'd probably just about lean Creasy as the winner, but I don't like him at that price at all. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Maybe one to avoid even. And in the main event pricing, Patrizzi minus 150 against Dimitar Gillian at minus 180. Again, tough to know. Patrizzi's a very good boxer, but very green. Not the best takedown defense in the world, but a very good athlete. A guy with a very high ceiling, I think. And look, a guy who looks like he can grow into a very good fighter, as myself and Brad were talking about. But Grillian looks like a little bit maybe ahead, a little bit more experience in terms of just how he fights. Good ground and pound as well, and good wrestling. Maybe he's the one you pick out there, and he's the one you bet on at minus 180. And then the Invicta betting, as I mentioned, Danni McCormack minus 165 plus 135 for Karolina Wojcik. Kalindra Faria now is around 275 minus 400 for Machado. D. Begley, also out of Ireland, is plus 150 against minus 200 Christina Williams. Now, D. Begley is someone who, hasn't had the best results maybe recently, but she's a very good fighter, very well regarded. And this might be a bounce back fight for her. So again, this might be the type of bet that you won't get this price on her next time. So keep an eye on that. I like that minus 150. Haven't seen a whole lot of Christina Williams. Watched one of her fights. I'm thinking, I basically said that could be an even enough. I think if Christina Williams fights to her best and we don't see improvements from Dee Begley, I think the line is just about right. But you never know. If you see improvements from Dee Begley, I think she could go in there. But as I said, I'd probably lean the plus 150, but I'm avoiding this one. The underdog in the Araujo Jujic fight is Maria Jujic. It's Araujo, and I think the favourite will win that one. Julia Dorn against Riley Martinez is a toss-up, and I think it is rightly so a toss-up. So, that is it. Those are my 5 bets for the week. Those are the betting lines for the week. And we'll be back obviously next week with more UFC and one championship, I believe, as well, and other stuff like that. So just to recap, 5 bets of the week. Danni McCormack to retain her Invicta £115 title at minus 165 at minus 133. Samantha Jean-Francois to beat Micol Disegni over in Cage Warriors. Alberth Diaz also to win in Cage Warriors at minus 225. A knockdown in 1-2 or 3 of Fury versus Ngannou at even money, and then Kalindra Faria at plus 275 to win over at Invicta as well. All right, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. Let me know your one bet for the week in the comments section below. Please subscribe. Please give it a thumbs up. Please give it a like. It really helps the algorithm. It really helps all of us. Shout out to all the crew over at Sherdog.com, John Brannigan, and all the lads over there as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.